Welcome to the Horse Speak Book Club. I'm Laura Wilsey. I'm here taking you on a journey through the Horse Speak Trilogy. The Horse Speak team is dedicated to giving horses a voice and being their well-deserved advocates. We provide evidence-based knowledge of equine body language that's intrinsic, observable, and repeatable. We offer online learning, a weekly video club where we analyze our members' videos from herd dynamics to riding. We also do in-person clinics. If you'd like to learn more, please check out our website at horsespeakacademy.com. And just so you know, everyone has a varied horsemanship background, so we ask that you keep the environment safe so no one feels shamed in any way. All right, as the protector, director, inspector of Horse Speak, we shall begin our reading on page number 75 under the subheading Tai Chi Strikes Again. In Tai Chi, the fountain of power comes out of the Tantien or Hara, the core. Tai Chi focuses on an O-type posture for power that is soft and causes the human to fill with positive chi, good energy. You are taught to sink your core in and downward, with your arms and legs becoming extensions of it. In beginner Tai Chi, you often learn to hold the ball, in which you embrace a big imaginary beach ball and move around a room with your arms held that way. You then connect your movements down to your feet so that your whole body is communicating clearly, and your core is the conductor of the orchestra. As an experiment, I tried going through my Tai Chi forms, holding my thumbs up, as I had been taught to do in riding position. It didn't work at all. In fact, it made the lower half of my body uncoordinated. So as riders, why were we taught to hold our bodies in the way we have? I realized I had to go past the idea of correct position on horseback and look at riding from the point of view of body language, not showmanship. From the perspective of body language, when we hold our hands out with the thumbs up and elbows in, our hardwired response to the limit is to, our hardwired response is to limit our breathing and utilize our biceps. We are in classic push-pull posture. The subtlety of the muscle arrangements in our bodies and the naturally automated responses that our bodies have are amazing. I picked the brains of physical therapists, chiropractors, bodybuilders, and yoga instructors, asking for their insight regarding the body's ability to maneuver. I learned that when you stabilize your upper body to point of immobility, you could still move your lower half. This allowed us to carry items while walking great distances, as we would have needed as a nomadic species in the past. However, when the upper body begins to move around, the lower half must move to compensate for balance. In other words, by loosening up your arms and hands, your core and legs must adapt and rebalance. Otherwise, you would fall over. This helped make sense of the O posture Rocky seemed to want me to practice. If the posture was detectable in skilled riders who looked like one with their horses, then I felt there must be a body wisdom principle behind it. Something related to the subconscious, innate control that prevents us from falling over. I wanted to link my conscious mind to my subconscious responses so I could engage this body wisdom fully and be completely present for my horse's body. I wanted my natural ability to balance, to add value to my horse's desire to stay balanced. Well, I didn't feel like I was stiff and I'd always prided myself on having a light feel on the reins. My body language had transmitted a signal to Rocky that he didn't care for. However, simply rotating my hands slightly allowed a softness to travel from my core up my arms to my shoulders and clavicle. And this then automatically softened my breathing. When riding him, I began to feel as though Rocky and I were flowing forward together quite naturally. I realized Rocky was teaching me about riding a horse, not how to perform a specific discipline. He was spelling out how to connect with my own body wisdom, and I decided I would follow the advice of a horse instead of the advice of people about horses. Since I am not in the military and I am not an active competitor, I am free to ride a horse as befits me. But training and tradition was pretty ingrained, and I struggled a bit. I decided to bring elements of this discovery to some of my students to test it out. Maria?
But does it work? When I introduced the O and slightly altered hand position in the saddle to my students, I was floored by the results. First, the effect on the horses was dramatic and immediate. I had my students rotate their hands until their palms faced completely downward and instructed them to hold the Tai Chi ball, giving them the O posture, as they moved around the arena. The changes appeared to ground them. The horses immediately released stress by breathing more deeply, reaching out with the head, neck, and shoulders, and taking even relaxed steps. They became so relaxed that some of them yawned. When I asked my students what they were feeling, everyone agreed that they felt much less tense, or that they had not realized how tense they must usually be. Now with deep breathing, now their deep breathing could circulate much more effectively. While at first I told the riders to go ahead and allow their bodies to relax into a little slump if it helped create the O, most very quickly found a new relationship with their backs. This posture did not sacrifice their backs. In fact, they found they could easily use their core to create a straight, flat back because their upper body was so soft. Next, I worked to understand how to keep this newfound openness through a turn. A common adaptation people often use of drawing the hand across the thigh for a tighter turn completely unbalances the horse. Drawing the hand and arm backward activates the bicep, creating tightness, and drawing it across your thigh sends a message down the inside front of the horse in a way that limits his leg movement. However, keeping the palm facing down and drawing the hand out and away from the mid-neck button, see page 42, at the height of your own core not only balances the horse's front end, it initiates the same natural arc that horse would move on when on his own. In other words, when a horse is naturally changing directions when loose, he uses his head and neck like a ballast, bending around from the mid-neck button. If the rider copies this motion, he can create tremendous liberty in the forehand. In addition, once we reconnect the dots to the use of leg cues, I found the students' bodies were already working with the turn, and their legs were already using the correct set of balancing aids. The phenomena of innate body wisdom added tremendous value to the conscious use of leg aids. Of course, my students could not ride in a horse show like this, so I needed to work on their muscle memory. The horse needed their body language to feel a certain way with a sense of openness, even when they had adopted a more traditional position for competition. After a few weeks of practicing, we refined the motions down to a more classical look. However, the slight shift of awareness was still in all of our bodies and hands, and the horses felt it. The gentle rotation of the hands toward a palms down position was invisible, and we were ready for the intercollegiate show.
To the show. When it comes to intercollegiate competition, shows are run by groups of colleges who each take turns hosting. At each event, there are a limited number of horses for the day, and everyone rides them. Competitors are assigned a horse but are not allowed to touch or meet him until it is their turn. By the end of the day, the horses are spent, tired of the revolving door of riders, and can get quite edgy. While some colleges were considered horsey schools with scouted talent on their teams, ours was not one of them. Frequently, our riders had only just learned to ride in the previous semester. There were also some students who had an extensive background in riding and horsemanship, which meant I needed to address the needs of both highly talented riders and brand new ones. I also wanted all my students to have fun and come out of the ring after their ride, believing that for those 7 minutes they gave something lovely back to the horse. Above all, I wanted everyone to stay safe. It was not uncommon for a tired and bored horse to buck toward the end of the day. One of my least experienced students was given a horse that had bucked in the previous session. She was nervous. She considered sitting her round out. At the last minute, her gumption drove her to try, and she mounted up. On the way to the gate, I watched as she turned her palms so they faced totally downward and took several deep breaths in an O, lightly turning the horse's head from side to side to release the tension in his poll. At the gate, she reverted to the correct position, and in they went. The horse cruised around the arena as though the two had been together all along. He was not a pretty mover, but his ears were in a contented sideways position as my student continued to focus on all her calm down cues. She was only in the walk-trot division, having had only one semester of riding, but she came in third. The whole team was so happy for her, and I was sold on the process. If nothing else, the altered upper body positions seemed to increase the level of safety for riders as it increased the level of comfort for horses. Thank you, Rocky. What else? In the hours I had spent poring over old pictures and writings as I tried to make sense of what I was learning from little Rocky, I had contemplated another aspect of equitation, this one related to dressage and its goal of activating the horse's core and hind end. The desired effect was that the horse sit down in his movement, using his hind end to power forward and up, and his core to lift the rider in a constant rolling sensation. This liberated the horse's front end and made the horse capable of performing airs above the ground and beautiful ballet-like movements, such as piaffe and passage. The neck of the horse looks arched. The base of the neck has lifted in engagement so that the chest is exposed and the shoulders are free to move. I could see that this, the ultimate horse and rider experience, was totally at zero. To achieve this level of power without losing control, the riders needed to become more and more still internally, and the horses were encouraged to lend their powerful movements to the rider without becoming aggressive. Of course, in battle, where dressage originated, aggression was useful, but not if it was out of control. As an artist, my eye tends to pick up certain details in figures. In many of the photos and illustrations of advanced dressage work I studied, I noticed that often the wing bones, scapulae, of the riders were rotated backward and their hands and arms were curled slightly inward. I searched through the Tai Chi moves I knew, and sure enough, I hit upon the reverse ball arm rotation. This sank your Tantian down and anchored your lower body so deeply that in a real Tai Chi master application, the master was immovable. I realized I used the arm position mostly when trying to get as many grocery bags as I could into my arms, so I only had to make one trip from the car to the house. In the scoop position, your humerus rotates outward, turning the eye of the inner elbow forward, engaging the scapula as well as the subscapularis tendon, which goes up into your armpit. This, in turn, can collect the transverse abdominis muscle in your abdominal wall, centered on top of the pubic bone. In other words, simply rotating my arms by turning my thumbs out told my pelvis to engage. My legs were indeed quite anchored.
Thank you. Danuta?
Sorry. Scoop it up. I got on Rocky and adopted the scoop up position. Allowing the core of my body to follow his natural motion, I realized it wanted to tuck in and down. My lower back deepened, and my own pole, below my occipital bone at the base of my skull, wanted to lengthen and arc. My legs wrapped around him comfortably, but with a lot of focus. Using a Tai Chi motion called wave hands like clouds, I emphasized one side of the scoop, rotating my thumb and humerus scapula in one fluid motion, more than the other to see what would happen. Rocky became very supple beneath me, and I could follow the feeling from one hand diagonally through my body to the other seat bone. The sensation flowed down the opposite leg, and if I lifted my big toe a little, the anchoring of the bilateral movement of my body was making seemed to complete the wave motion. I followed the feel and timing of this movement in my own body with a soft inner core that allowed Rocky to arc first one way and then with the other with ease. By playing with the level of rotation in my core, or the amount of leg aid, we could bend in an arc more or less, or from front or hind. Essentially, it felt like doing Tai Chi with my horse, not just on my horse. When I released all cues and returned to neutral, Rocky took a few straight steps forward, and then I felt something truly amazing. It was like his whole hind end shuffled underneath me, and his front end lifted in front of me. His back seemed to lift beneath me, and in a pleasant rolling sensation carried me forward. He began to march forward with his pole arched, moving with what felt like pride. We rode around like that for a few more minutes, and suddenly his lower back cracked like a self-adjustment. He blew out his nose and shook his head a little. I got off and rubbed his ears. We were both quite pleased. I went on to experiment with how the scoop motion might work when leading a horse as well. While leading Rocky forward, I invited him to respond to my thumb to arm to scapular rotation, as though I was scooping out some ice cream from a big bin. What happened was interesting. He abruptly softened his neck and bent in the direction of my suggestion. Since we were walking forward, this made him soften his head and neck and bend towards me. In the interest of exploration, I offered the scoop while changing direction, and while both beginning to walk off and coming to a halt. In each case, the scoop created a softening effect while encouraging him to bend, yield, or to comply in a relaxed manner. I did note that the effect was lost if I forgot to begin with my palm facing down on the lead rope, thumb towards the ground. However, leading with my thumb in the upright position pointing towards the halter seemed to send an instant message to Rocky to brace. even when there was a float in the lead rope. I realized my own body language was unconsciously in the position of fighting or bracing when my thumb was up because my bicep was engaged. I had uncovered a secret stash of tension that I was accidentally including in all my horse handling skills. Maybe I was not feeling emotionally tense, but my body was sending a different message, and Rocky was not happy with it. Rocky was more than willing to explore both my palm down and scoop up motions on the ground. It seemed to help him feel less frustrated with being led. Over time, these two motions ended up smoothing out most of the tangles we tended to get into in hand. When I rotated my wrists palm down while leading, it created a relaxing, soothing, and anchoring feel on the line. I realized this was part of my O posture on the ground. The scoop on the ground gave me a tremendous advantage if a horse was determined to run away with me, not uncommon at the rescues where I worked. I learned that by creating this scoop movement with a horse that was tense, afraid, or difficult, a resistance-free message went through the lead rope, causing the horse to turn back towards me rather than try to flee or fight. Eventually, I realized that using the scoop while facing a horse and asking him to back up could soften and relax his back and hind end, or create a very easy bend from any point of his body. The overall effect of these practices was to change leading a horse from a task into a dance. I was pleased to discover that even previously hard-to-lead horses responded to this new approach very quickly, and that students and volunteers I worked with could learn it just as fast. As opposed to training techniques that are actually based on obedience, the use of palm down and scoop up on the lead rope became quite natural after only a short time using it. It seemed to me that it gave such a pleasant sensation to both horses and humans so quickly that there was really nothing to learn. All you had to do was feel the ease and comfort of this body language once or twice, and then your inner body wisdom took over, and you essentially couldn't remember doing it wrong.
As I deepened my awareness of what had previously been subconscious body language while writing, certain types of writing styles began to make sense. It was like the secret sauce of body wisdom that was hiding underneath any discipline began to instantly pop out at me. I could understand the synthesis of body language to writing style. What I might have previously considered just a certain set of rules pertaining to a given writing system now appeared to me as logical adaptations, springing forth from the deeper level of body mechanics that made up the original body language of a master writer. Whether I watched a talented Western rider rounding up cows or a classical dressage maestro, there were, beneath the obvious surface differences, core similarities in body mechanics, which allowed the horse to use his own body in direct correspondence. By over-exaggerating the motions of O or X and palm down or scoop up, and by keeping it very, very simple, I found that I could reach a wide variety of horses, those I was working with at rescues and in riding schools, as well as the array of private clients I had from all walks of life. These horses came from such diverse backgrounds, and many had holes in their riding horse education. But by keeping it simple and knowing where to start, all horses relaxed about the riding process, and some made enormous turnarounds. Even highly schooled horses took bigger breaths and let go of that edgy, tense energy that often lies just below the surface. Rocky had shown me a way to begin having a conversation from the back of a horse rather than getting up there and expecting him to be a biological motorcycle. When we as riders get on our horses, we assume that they should know our cues, our aids, and our style. However,
The horse is often guessing at what will make us happy, considering how one rider is satisfied with a slow, ambling walk, while another wants a spirited, lively one. Each rider's unconscious body language settles into a sense of this moment is right, and that might be different for every person. The horse is left not knowing why people are so hard to please. When a person is convinced her seat is correct, then the problem usually lands on the horse. It is his fault he is not performing something correctly. Rocky taught me that this is very unpleasant for a horse to deal with. He made me dig deeper and realize that while I was on his back, perhaps I needed to rethink my expectations from years of riding. My trained beliefs had said to him, I don't care what you like or are interested in, I only want you to work for me. I have not asked nor have I given you a chance. I expect you to speed up or slow down when I demand it, and it's not over till it's over. It occurred to me that it was impossible to treat a horse like a partner if I was also demanding obedience. Learning to ask Rocky permission to come aboard was his first lesson to me. Learning how to blend his body instead of demanding he obey mine was next. The final picture came to light when we, as a truly integrated unit, could go somewhere together. Then I could use no more than a piece of baling twine around his neck and still hop on and have some fun. This was the point at which he learned to move an overturned muck bucket into place with his front foot and look at me to offer me a ride, as if to offer me a ride. At the same time, the other horses in my working life were all softening, opening, and becoming more engaged in the process of their own existence. My students were beginning to be able to hear their horses, and even though not every single day was roses and rainbows, there were fewer and fewer incidences of horses blowing up. In fact, this became the rarity and usually pointed to something more troublesome in that horse's world. I could feel it all coming together. What I learned from Rocky was truly a gift. And then in the box, lick and chew. By being open to allowing my horse to teach and guide me, I broke through the preconceived notions and limiting beliefs I had been bumping up against in my earlier work with horses, submitting to a new paradigm that sometimes scary and often difficult. Allowing my working knowledge to be suspended was the only way to experience the breakthrough that Rocky offered me. What lay on the other side of what had been an uncomfortable learning curve was worth the effort.
Beautiful. Thank you, ladies, for reading today. And as usual, if you would like, you can raise your virtual hand to have a little conversation with me, or you can just add your thoughts in the chat. So this is an amazing 10 pages of wisdom that Rocky shared with Sharon, and Sharon was able to listen. And where do I begin? I'm actually going to read Danuda's comment at the beginning here. Thinking of writing as body language makes it real communication with your horse. Talking with rather than a learned monologue. Yes, that sums it up. Because from all of the things that were mentioned here, Sharon realized the different sensations she was having in her body because she rode dressage, she rode Western, she rode all these different disciplines. And what Rocky taught her is ride the horse, not the discipline. And the thing is that, and we've actually presented that topic a lot at different events, like the Equitana in Europe, or locally, there's the Equine Affair in New England, which brings people from all over the country. Um, so anyway, it's profound because also each horse has their own way of movement, and each one of us has our own body style, so to speak. Short, tall, and different, variations in between. And so therefore, it's all physics. It's all physics of how Buzz. There's a fairy. Um, how our bodies come together to move well. So it's not riding a form. That's basically what this says. We're not just, thumbs up, tuck your butt, here we go. Like our body on top of another body, we have to adjust ourselves. So then there is flow in the horse's movement. And that is one of the things that is so important because we do end up blocking by accident movement through the shoulder, or if our pelvis is in the wrong position, we can be blocking the movement of the energy going through the spine, like if you were carrying a bad backpack not well. So therefore the lumbar of our own back from not carrying things well can start to hurt. That's why, the thing is for us, bend your knees, right? Use those sit buttons to lift objects. So similarly, surprise, horses need to engage their sit buttons to then have the line go through their jump up button to basically, if you could draw a diagonal line, basically from where your butt is through the jump up button down to the sit. That line is where they need to engage their muscles to be able to lift you. And if we are behind the vertical, or if we are not rocking our pelvis up and forward, like if you were a belt buckle wearer, or imagine if you had a belt buckle on and you could rock your pelvis. It's not actually a really good positioning of my wrist, but to demonstrate this. But basically, imagine if my wrist was a pelvis, and just move your pelvis up a little bit, so then you can have a flat back. Therefore, that is helping your horse feel more empowered because your sit bone, your tailbone is not going into their spine. So, and to answer Ellen's question, we're actually going to be in Europe that weekend. So maybe next year. This says a personal thing. Sharon is not overly fond of doing events like that, but I might do it. But anyway, that's just a personal preference, and it's very tiring. Um, so we began the chapter with Tai Chi. Why do we say Tai Chi? Well, because the goal is for us as humans, because we are talking with our body to a horse. And we want, whether you're walking your horse and hanging out on the ground and just doing groundwork, or especially if you are riding, it is so important that we are able to move our body in one unit. So basically, can we have the energy come up through our pelvis into our arms, have our armpits open, not clamped, and have them open and round in O posture. And this is what the key note of the whole thing about especially riding is. And so there's so many poignant details in this chapter that are describing how our body I am shoulding. I try not to should things, but this is a should. You should follow because of the section on page 76 when she wrote, then I felt there must be a body wisdom principle behind it, something related to the subconscious, innate controls that prevent us from falling over. So I wanted to link my conscious mind to subconscious responses so I could engage this body wisdom fully and completely present for my horse's body. So this is very important because what she has decoded is noticing the different postures that she was using, whether they're basically created flow, breath, or clamping, no breathing. And so when we practice Tai Chi, we can notice different things because what Tai Chi helps one to do, or another type of martial arts, she likes Tai Chi because it's more rounded movements versus karate, which is more straight line, staccato, stiff movements. So that's why she likes Tai Chi. And she mentions, the holding the ball. If you have a yoga ball, or even start smaller and just walk around with a ball and notice how many muscles you're using to carry that. And the keynote is to be aware of your pelvis, because what can happen is we all have body habits. And I was actually talking to my 6-year-old grandson on the way to school today, and he doesn't really like school very much because he would much rather be moving his body. And I'm like, I get it. I get it. And I'm like, I know, and school is really hard right now. Because you're in first grade and you're learning numbers and letters and reading and writing and all this stuff. It's like there's so much in your first year of school that your brain's like, so, I'm like, I'm going to be with you with your homework and stick with it because, these are really important years. And I think like this foundational stuff that's actually pretty complex. It's for a 6-year-old. I mean, the ages between 5 and 6 is profound. And I didn't have my own children. This is actually my step grandson. And it's just, I can't believe it. And I just can't believe I was talking to him about my schooling. And, some of the struggles I had more with reading than with reading, of course, reading than with arithmetic. And so I was like, I'm here with you. You're not alone in your learning. But yes, you should be moving your body more than you actually are. So anyways, tail swish on that tangent. So with that being said, why did I even say that? Because we are taught to sit down. We spent, like a few years of our formative years to learn how to crawl, or even actually how to lift ourselves up to even start to crawl, right? And we start walking and then we start running. And so there's all this balance that we stitched ourselves together to learn how to do. And then boom, gone because we spend, most of the day, 8 hours a day, a few hours out, or maybe an hour out of that at recess, moving around and stuff. So, so then we lose our 1 unit. We had to be 1 unit to actually stand up. Because if you weren't, then you fell over. So, so it's so important that we do remind our body how to work together. And doing some kind of Tai Chi. So I actually have now an ab machine it's a vertical ab machine where you lift your knees up to your chest basically. And it's kind of like a whole body workout. I actually, oddly enough, and I'm not getting a kickback out on TikTok Shop. So, and I bought actually all of my workout equipment on TikTok Shop, which is so funny. And my body worker is like, whatever you're doing, it's amazing because from the last time I saw you a couple months ago to now, it's great. And with that being said, I'm an athlete. I played basketball in my, teens and into college and everything. And I can do anything with some kind of sport and be really good at it. And with that, my body still actually wasn't working as a unit. So therefore, I had to keep learning too. So it doesn't matter if you grew up doing stuff, there is I see the comments about Sally Swift. I have some things to say about that, which she's amazing and actually lived locally to us. Um, so therefore it's like having this body awareness. And so um when we are the yoga ball, what diameter, I'm not really sure. There's different diameters. Whatever is comfortable for you and your body size is what I suggest. Was it Sally Swift? I'm not sure of the name. Who had each horse rider come together, unique creature? She suggested taking the first part of the horse's name and adding the latter part of the humans, or vice versa. So Danuta would be Harry, Dairy, very different from Anna and Harry, Anari. Huh. Anna and I have different ways of writing. That's interesting. Absolutely. I just opened a Sally Swift books this morning. Yes, centered writing. So this is really great. Centered writing is very good for working on the pelvis and things that she's basically saying, don't touch the horse's mouth, which is good because, the thing is that people can, especially if you're using a bit, people can be a little bit too forceful on accident because a bit is for fine motor skill with your hands. And so with that being said, balance comes through your hands first. Now, this circles back to what I was saying about there's multiple things about movement that we learned how to crawl. We had to use our hands to crawl. First, we balance through our hands. This is so important. Period. The end. This is also why in this reading, Sharon was talking about holding a lead rope here, thumb up toward the halter versus palm down on the lead rope as if you were holding reins. How you hold your reins, which is not straight like holding like this, if you can see me, straight up, vertical knuckles and gripping. Yes, baby bird, something gentle, open palm should be floating because any tight joint in your body is going to cause tightness in any part of your body. I moved my pinky, that stopped my movement. So it's so important that we pay attention to our hand. It's all about your wrist, y'all. Period. The end. You can do all the other things you want to play with in regards to riding. If your wrist is broken, you're going to be not breathing, you're not going to be flowing, and everything's going to be stiff. Period. The end. And you can take my word for it, or you can do what Sharon did and what she talked about in this book is pay attention to what happens to your body when you do this stuff. When you engage, you do fingernails up and do a scoop as if you're scooping ice cream. You can see I'm up high because I'm sitting. Okay. So if you're scooping ice cream, it's going all the way through to the scapula, which is your shoulder. Pardon me. So she talked about engaging the scoop up, and then that talks to our pelvis. Our pelvis then talks to the hind end of the horse. Okay. So it's so important that you pay attention to the wrist. And we have in our books toward the end, there is riding. So there's a lot of good things that Sharon has decoded with riding the horse, not the discipline. So Sally Swift has great, great ideas. Absolutely. And again, it's really important that we have good balance through our wrists first. Palm down, calm down. Have your angle of your hands be basically put your hands on the wither of your horse and lift up. And there should be a V shape, thumbs toward each other when you're holding your reins at belly button height. Okay. If you, again, this is paying attention to your body, and Violet can attest to this because I coached her on the video club about when we accidentally bring the rein down below our thigh. Even if you watch me, I'm up high again because my belly button's down below the camera. I dropped my hand down below my thigh. I fell over. That's what's going to happen to your horse. They're going to fall over on the inside shoulder. Okay. So when we practice having palms down and doing the yoga rein, and it's big movements at first, you do big movements to teach, and then it can turn into tiny little things, and even using your eyes, sternum, your toe points in the direction you need to go, and you're not even using your reins at all other than to just keep the horse in balance with some nice connection. Okay. So I'm going to just squeeze through here. Thank you, Laura, for, physio ball, Pilates ball. I've never read this word before. A yamana, body rolling, are ways I teach addition to yoga. For me, all critical for riding. Not that I ride enough to benefit from my functional fitness classes, right? The cobbler's kids have no shoes. So I was talking about something and I had a shiny ADHD moment. If you are practicing walking with a ball, please be aware that you could have a bad body habit where you could be carrying this ball through your shoulders rather than rocking our pelvis up. Imagine you have a big belt buckle on and you rock that pelvis up to have a flat back to then, if you can, ideally feel the energy, feel that chi movement from your pelvis out into your arms. Because then if you don't, that's fine. But having awareness of what body sensations you're having is so important because then we can prevent injury. Because if you're carrying something and you're carrying it with your neck jutted out and everything's wrong, then that's why your back hurts, is because you're not using your pelvis. And I know this. I know this for myself from many years of not paying attention to detail on lifting things and not using my sit buttons to lift things because I'm strong, upper body strength. I wish I used more of my pelvis in my formative years, okay? And I know I'm only 46 and I feel it. So I'm trying to do what I can at this point to make sure my future self isn't in a lot of pain. So there's always time, period, the end. No matter what age group you're in, there's always time to feel better, period, the end. Whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, we can always start new. All right. Let's see. So if I were you, you could go back through and find the moments of when Sharon is talking specifically about movement of how she is holding the scoop with your humerus rotates and the eye of the elbow here scoops up. Okay. Because that engages. Again, I've said that just a few moments ago. The other part I want to bring in, and I'm going to then check out the chats, is that the profoundness of what Sharon was teaching to her students, where she mentioned, yes, some of the students at the college had some horsemanship background. They were riders and things, but it was like more than half of the class had zero riding experience. And within a couple months, Sharon was able to get these kids, by doing these body postures, to be able to do a walk trot class at a collegiate level riding competition. And why is this so freaking awesome? Because these were against schools who legitimately, they get scholarship, these kids, to come to their schools. These are big time equestrian schools in our region that have scouted talent to represent their schools. So Sharon's taking kids like, hey, I want to ride a pony, and then they're going to show it as freaking, college show. And they got fourth place, year number two. They got fourth place out of 13 schools. So, and she taught the things that Rocky taught her, the things that she's mentioning in this book. And it's so basic. It's so basic. When you get the O posture down well on their back, it's so easy because you don't have to think so much. Because you could I mean, I would love to, honestly, when I have a spare moment, to literally write down every single detail that one needs to pay attention to for your humanness, let alone all the stuff that we could and should be paying attention in our horse. Feeling each leg in its movement. Can you feel it? Is it flow or is it stumpy? Right? Like there's so much to this art and craft of riding, but with some basic foundational skills, it's a breeze, truly. And if you are able to ride bareback, then bareback doesn't lie. Really, you get your seat. If you can stay on a horse trotting bareback, or if there's a little crow hop or something, then riding in a saddle is a breeze. So I specialize in bareback riding. I typically will use a pad or something because I love the feel of just tilting my pelvis and my horse turns on a dime. So there's just really some small things. And one of our Kirsty Ludwig, who wrote Horse Speak Under Saddle, it is in German, and we hope that it will get translated into English. She is a student of the horse, and she has been to hundreds of clinics. She has books and books and books. And what she said was the yoga rain changed everything. Sharon, what you taught with horse speak and riding, you don't need anything else. Yeah, you need, if you want to do fancy dressage and things of that nature, but for foundational riding, it's all in there. So I'm just throwing that out there because, riding is simple and complex at the same time. And the more that we can pay attention to how we are holding our own body and feeling the body sensations, we're well on our way, because we accidentally just, you're having choppy connection. Sorry, I just got shiny moment. Well, we're almost done. I don't know what happened to my internet. Very choppy. Well, that's annoying. I have Wi-Fi here and I'm the only one who has my password. So there must be a dysfunction junction happening, or maybe I need to stop shaking the table. Maybe that's what it was. So, anyway, I'm going to read the rest of the chats and a lot of riders use the horse's mouth for balance, which isn't good for the horse's mouth. Yes, it is not. That's the thing. That's why, yes, having palm down, calm down helps us have better balance in ourselves and then rocking our pelvis forward. So therefore, then we are trying to practice our own self-balance. We have to balance on them. We can't expect them to balance for us. And that is the challenge. We're almost done. It's 11 o'clock, but I'm read these. For a while, I took riding lessons with an instructor who told us to let your elbows touch your rib cage. It never felt soft to me. It was so constrained. Open, soft arms are so much easier. Yes, if you can have some space in your armpits, it's so important. Again, just feel your body if you can. And there might be reasons why you don't want to, and I'm sorry about that. Everyone has something going on internally from past experiences, whether from youth to adulthood. And so that can cause our body to clamp, period, before we even get on a horse, right? So, that's a personal journey. If you want to take it, do it because it's worth it. Because the body holds the score. There's all kinds of books you can read on that, on vagal nerve and everything. I noticed that I can communicate with my horse by pinching the lead rope only. It gets her attention, and we will know when he may or may not eat grass from here. Yes, open hand to go, close your hand to whoa, or hello, little pinky on the lead rope. Knock, knock, knock. No, thank you. Yeah, it's powerful. When you have your palm down, you can do so much with just your hand and barely any movement because the messages are getting sent to their face, which is so like 6 of the buttons that we talk about in horse speak are on their face. And the halter is sitting on the bridge of the nose and the follow me button. They're hearing us, and the other one's on the cheek. 3 buttons the halter is resting on. Riding the horse, not the discipline, is so powerful. Thank you so much for all of this. Yamuna ball rolling is a self massage on a small ball. Oh, okay, cool. And then we got the choppy. Your analogies are incredible. I love it. Pelvic floor training is my main focus for my functional fitness classes. I just translate to everything we do in life. And the I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ball rolling has helped me tremendously. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Laura. I appreciate it. Can hear you now. I can totally see how your books are literally all anyone needs to ride. No one approaches connection with the horse as you two do. Thank you. Laura, thanks once again. You're welcome. Enjoyed being here. I enjoyed being here too. So I'm going to close this out. Thank you for sharing space with me today. And all we want to do with Horse Speak is give you the gift that Rocky and Dakota and all the other horses that Sharon has worked with, we want to give it to you. It's about you and your empowerment. So if you want to learn more, we're heading to Minnesota this weekend. Fly out to Minnesota to meet us for a 4-day clinic. We offer clinics at our house. We're going to be going to Germany in November, and then we're taking a little bit of rest from travel. But we look forward to seeing you either in person or online. Go to our website at horsespeakacademy.com. May you enjoy the journey of learning horse speak and also have fun doing it. All right? Enjoy the rest of your day. There is no meeting next week, y'all, because I'm coming back from Minnesota. So I'll see you on the flip side in November. Can you believe it? I can't. Take care. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your day.